All right, let's dive right in. Every single time you hear politicians debating tax cuts or stimulus checks or big government spending projects, you're actually hearing the echoes of a massive battle. A battle between two giant economic ideas that asks a really fundamental question about how our world works. And that's really the heart of it all. On one hand, you have the view that the economy is this incredible, self-regulating system that if you just leave it alone, will always find its own perfect balance. But on the other hand, you've got the view of the economy as a powerful engine, for sure, but one that can stall out and sometimes needs a serious jumpstart. Let's start with that first idea, the perfect machine. So, for the longest time, the dominant theory, the one pretty much everyone agreed on, was what we call the classical model. It was this really optimistic, kind of elegant idea that the economy basically runs itself. And it all stood on a few very powerful core assumptions. Now, here's what's so cool about this. All these ideas fit together like a perfect puzzle. The thinking went like this. If you produce something, the income you get from selling it creates the demand to buy something else. That's a famous idea called Say's law. So what if there's a recession and people lose their jobs? No big deal, they said. Wages and prices will just fall until it's cheap enough for companies to hire everyone back. The system just corrects itself. So what's the best thing for the government to do? Absolutely nothing. Just get out of the way. That hands-off approach, that's laissez-faire. And this right here is the picture of that idea in action. This is the classical labor market. Now, I know it looks a bit technical, but the core concept is actually super simple. It just says that if wages can move up and down freely, the supply of workers will always meet the demand from companies, right there in that sweet spot in the middle. In this perfect world, unemployment is only temporary, or it's because someone just chose not to work. A truly self-regulating machine. Yeah, and then the Great Depression hit in the 1930s. And it didn't just crack this worldview, it completely shattered it. You had millions upon millions of people out of work, factories sitting empty, and the economy was definitely not self-correcting. The machine had totally seized up, and the old instruction manual was useless. The world needed a new idea. It needed a mechanic. And that mechanic was the absolutely brilliant British economist John Maynard Keynes. He looked out at the wreckage of the global economy and basically argued that this classical model wasn't just wrong, it was dangerously wrong. He believed that just waiting around for the economy to fix itself wasn't just a bad idea, it was cruel. This quote just perfectly sums up his whole philosophy. I mean, what good are these elegant theories about some long-run equilibrium when people are starving and jobless in the short run? Keynes said we have to act, we have to intervene, and we have to fix the problems that are right in front of our faces. And so he took on every single pillar of classical thought. So here's how Keynes just flipped the whole model on its head. He said it's not supply that drives the economy, it's demand, what people and businesses are actually willing to spend. He pointed out that, hey, people don't spend every single dollar they make, they save some of it. And maybe most importantly, he said wages are not flexible, they're sticky. Think about it. People in unions fight against pay cuts. It's just reality. And because of that, unemployment can get stuck at painfully high levels for a really, really long time. In this graph shows one of his most powerful insights. He called it the psychological law of consumption. It's a simple idea, but it's profound. As our total income goes up, yeah, our total spending goes up too, but not by as much. You see that widening gap between the two lines? That's savings. And if that money being saved isn't being invested by businesses, you get a huge shortfall in demand. And that shortfall means unsold stuff and people out of a job. So for Keynes, it all boiled down to this one key concept, aggregate demand, the total spending in the economy. And if people and businesses just aren't spending enough to keep everyone working, Keynes argued that the government absolutely must step in and spend to fill that gap. You can think of it as the government literally stepping on the accelerator when the private sector's foot is on the brake. But, of course, the story doesn't just end there. Keynes didn't just win and that was that. For the next few decades, this intellectual battle just kept on raging. The pendulum of who was more influential swung back and forth, leading us into the modern chapter of this great debate. So today, you've got the intellectual heirs of this rivalry. You've got the new classicals, and their ideas really took off in the 1970s when Keynesian policies were struggling to deal with something called stagflation, that awful mix of high unemployment and high inflation. And on the other side, you've got new Keynesians. They still hold on to Keynes's core ideas, but they focus more on the nitty-gritty, real-world reasons, like employment contracts or even just the cost of reprinting menus, that explain why wages and prices are so sticky. And if you boil the modern divide down, you can really see the echoes of that original debate. Are prices flexible or are they sticky? Is unemployment a personal choice, or can people be involuntarily out of work? I mean, the 2008 financial crisis brought these questions roaring back to life, with tons of people calling for Keynesian-style stimulus, which pushed that pendulum once again. It's the same fundamental fight, just playing out in a new century. Okay, so why should you care about some century-old academic debate? Because the outcome of this fight shapes the policies that directly affect your wallet, your job, and your future. Seriously, next time you're watching the news, just listen. When you hear a politician arguing for tax cuts to boost supply and investment, that is a straight-up classical idea. And when you hear another arguing for government spending on roads and bridges to create jobs and boost demand, that's pure Keynes. This isn't history, folks. It's the playbook for our political and economic world every single day. At the end of the day, it all comes back to this one question. This tension between the idea of a perfect, self-healing machine and a powerful engine that sometimes needs a mechanic is still the most important economic question of our time. And how we choose to answer it, well, that determines everything.